Hello everyone, today I am embroidering some gym bags, and in the midst of doing this I thought of some important things that we need to talk about. And it's going to take me a minute to build up to what I'm actually getting to with this message. So I do have timestamps linked below just in case you want to skip ahead. Likewise, I have listed all of the articles that I have referred to in this video over on my blog, and there's a link to that down in the description box below. I've been reading a lot about how people are losing their jobs. It used to be that if you lost your job, you could create yourself a resume, drive around to a bunch of places and ask to speak to their manager, give them the resume, and that they would consider you for a job. But this is no longer the case. Instead, what the manager will tell you is to go online and fill out an application. And many of these jobs are on job boards. And allegedly, these job boards are selling people's data to third parties for money. Allegedly, the other thing that is happening is that when you fill out so many applications and get no response back, it allegedly pushes you down in the job board's algorithm. So you end up not being seen as much the longer that you are on them, allegedly. The third thing that is happening is that there are lots of ghost jobs out there. So, and this has become mainstream media. I used to think that the idea of a ghost job was completely absurd and total hogwash, but I'm now learning that that's actually true. So a lot of people are applying to jobs that are not really real jobs. And I oftentimes wondered why a company would post a fake job online, take the time to interview people, and even hire them and train them, only to let them go after the training. And what I'm learning is that allegedly these companies are creating fake job listings and fake jobs numbers so that they look more attractive to investors. And when they get that investment money, that is extra money for them to be able to use in their businesses, allegedly. So all of this, in the end, if it's really occurring, does hurt the average person who has lost their job and is out there looking to find new employment. So the next thing that people go to when they still have bills to pay but are unable to find a job is that they start looking at ways to become an entrepreneur. And this is where I get excited, because sewing and embroidery are two different avenues that you can take towards entrepreneurship. The cheapest way to become an entrepreneur is to sew, because there are lots of sewing machines out there for really cheap. I did a YouTube short about a brother sewing machine that I found at Goodwill for $14, and I often find these regular sewing machines at places like Goodwill for under $20. And one of my best straight stitch sewing machines is a Singer 404, and some blogs have even compared the 404 to the Juki TL series machines. I'm not sure how true that is because I've never used a TL series machine, but what I do know is that my Singer 404 is strong and it can sew through some pretty thick materials, and you could very easily get one of those Singer 404s and be able to start a business, whether it be making I don't know, doggy pouches, making all types of different things that you could make, little, I don't know what you call them, but little accessories for dogs. You could probably mend curtains. You could, what else would I do with my 404? It's a straight stitch only machine, so there's only certain projects that you would do with that. But I say all this because I got my Singer 404 for only $25 on Facebook Marketplace. So you could really put a straight stitch only sewing machine to great use, or you could even get a straight zigzag machine like what I had found at Goodwill and be able to put that thing to good use towards starting your own business and advertise your business. There's all different sorts of ways that you could advertise your business. Business wise, I've always found word of mouth to be most effective, because when you do a job for somebody that you know and then that person goes and tells somebody, then your business just organically grows in that way. I don't want to ramble on and on, but what I will say is that it's very possible to start a little sewing business, and if not anything else, to get some side income to help supplement you while you're on your journey towards finding new employment or towards growing your business. Now I want to move on to embroidery. Right now I am working on an embroidery project, and this is the primary reason why I thought about doing this video. Embroidery is one of those things that is very expensive to get into, or so it is said. A lot of people will say that in order to get into embroidery, you need a multi-needle machine with a large embroidery window and a free arm. These machines are incredibly expensive because the more needles you have on your machine, the more expensive that it is. The larger embroidery window that you have on the machine, the more expensive that it is. And also, if you have a free arm, that's instantly going to be a more expensive machine. You combine all three of those things together and you're paying thousands of dollars for a machine. I have this multi-needle Janome MB7 here, but I didn't start out with this machine. I actually started out with a 4x4 embroidery machine from Walmart. And you're probably saying, like, how did you start out with that? You can start out with that. It might limit the types of projects that you do, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be done. People will say that you can't start out embroidery on a flatbed machine because it's harder to move your project around. So it's easier to catch your project underneath the machine and to stitch it together where it doesn't need to be stitched together, so you end up ruining blanks that way. It does happen, but there's certain ways that you can pin the project out of the way to prevent that from occurring, and it's still a workable situation. And also I would say that you should only buy the embroidery machine that you can afford. Don't buy the embroidery machine that your credit card can afford, because you never know what your financial situation might be like later. You know, you might be doing pretty well off right now, but later on you could be sleeping in your car. We never know what is going to happen from one day to the next, and you never want to be stuck with a credit card payment, because the person who takes a loan is always a slave to the lender, and nobody out here wants to be a slave. So I would just leave that part right there. I would say if you have $800 in your account after paying all of your bills, then you could afford to buy a $400 machine. And if you don't even have that much money in your account, then you can't afford that. And that's quite all right, because you don't have to start out with some fancy smancy embroidery machine in order to get started. In fact, when I first started embroidery, I bought all my supplies from a lady who had been embroidering for about 40 years on a regular straight zigzag Bernina Sport that she bought back in the 70s, and she was doing beautiful embroideries. There was no way for me to be able to tell whether or not something was embroidered on her Bernina Sport or on my Janome MB7. Yes, it does take quite a bit of skill to be able to free motion, but it can be done. And in fact, I did this project here on my MB7, but one of the bags that I did started to mess up on the MB7, so it couldn't be completed that way because the embroidery would have been misaligned if I had tried to restart the job on the MB7. So what I did was unhoop it and actually move it over to my 4x4 machine from Walmart, and I actually finished out the job with free motion instead of even using the computerized functions of the embroidery machine at all. So yes, you can do embroidery with free motion. You might not be able to take the same types of jobs, but yes, you can do it. It can be done on even a regular straight and zigzag sewing machine. Now, I am reading a lot of stories about how people are in financial straits and even taking out loans or placing their groceries on Afterpay services like Affirm, Afterpay, and Klarna. Those are necessities, so I can understand why you might have to put those on a credit card or get a loan in order to pay for those, because those are needed items. And it's no shame in the game if that's where you are, but I would never, ever, ever take out a loan for a embroidery machine if I did not have the same capital to be able to pay for that in cash. So let's say I keep using that $800 number as example just because that's just an even number that's in my head. But if you had $800 in your pocket, that means you could only afford a $400 machine. And at that point, I would say yes, you can put that machine on an Affirm or on a credit card, because then what you could do is put the other capital that you have in your pocket towards the other supplies that you're going to need for the machine, and then just gradually pay off the machine in installments before the interest sets in. That way you can buy your things like your interfacing, your thread, and your needles for your machine. And I know that if you're going to be doing business, then of course you're also going to need additional hoops. So you could use your capital that you have in your account to pay for that part, and then put your embroidery machine on the card and gradually pay it off, and not being in any danger of accruing interest. You don't want to accrue interest. You just don't want to. So that is my advice on that. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to embroidery is taxes. Well, when you are considering buying a sewing machine here in the United States, there is sales tax that you have to pay on a machine. So the more expensive of a machine that you purchase, the more taxes that you're going to pay on that at the time of sale. And then two, if you are buying the embroidery machine with your business license, then that too means that you're going to have to let the government know that you actually have that machine by law. And when you do that, if you're living in a state that has business property taxes, then you'll also have to pay a yearly property tax on that item. So that pretty much discourages someone from getting an embroidery machine that is too expensive, because the more expensive of a machine that you get, then the more business personal property taxes that you have to pay on that thing at the end of the year. So that is yet another thing to think about, and even more encouragement as to why you wouldn't want to spend a tremendous amount of money on your embroidery machine. Over the years, so many people have accused me of being a salesman for certain companies that sell sewing and embroidery machines. But as you can tell from this video, I am not a sewing machine dealer of any sorts, because I am not telling you to go out here and spend all the money you have on a sewing or embroidery machine. Instead, what I'm telling you to do is to be financially responsible and to not go into debt unnecessarily. I hope that this video has been encouragement for someone to let you all know that you do not have to spend an arm and a leg in order to start a sewing or embroidery business, and that you can do so without going in a tremendous amount of debt. I thank you so much for watching. Please be kind to each other in the comment section below, but let me know what your thoughts are about this, if you will, down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.